Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome everybody to this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. So glad you could join us today. My next guest is Mike Seidl. He's the co-founder of the REI Capital Guys, a private lending firm that's placed over $20 million in real estate projects since 2017. Mike's got a background in economics from NYU. And early in career, he was in the mental health and social services industries. Mike brings a rare mix of financial expertise and deep insight into human behavior. He's built two successful companies, and today he's not only helping investors fix and flip and fund deals, but he's also working toward launching a nonprofit for youth that are aging out of the foster care system. Welcome to the show, Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm excited. I like doing these podcasts. I hear good things about you, so let's go.
Awesome. So you've done a bunch of different things, and I would say probably a wide range of, I would say, like value proposition, right? From being in the healthcare industry to now, lending money to people and some stuff in between. Tell me about that journey.
Well, when I was in college, I actually dropped out my third year, went backpacking in Europe. I studied economics in school. And when I got back, the first job that was available was working at a facility for sexual and physically abused kids. So I took a job as a residential counselor. Now I had some psychology in school, so it was an easy fit for me. And I did that for a couple of years. I worked at a psychiatric hospital as a mental health worker for about a year. And I ran a group home for developmentally disabled men for a year. Mm-hmm. And then I started a company. My first company was Medical Alert Systems, push a button, get an ambulance. I always knew I wanted to start a business. For me, it was a necessity because my mouth and my brain don't always work together, and that's not conducive to being a W-2 employee. So I had to work myself as a survival technique. So we did Medical Alert Systems, again, push a button, get an ambulance. I started that with a partner. And after 10 years, we had several thousand customers in 15 states. Sold it to a public company back in 1998, in the old days when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. And after that, I took 5 years off, drove around the U.S. for 16 months in a motorhome. And between the motorhome and the car, we did 56,000 miles in 16 months between the two vehicles combined. When I was done, I knew I wanted to live in a place with whitewater kayaking because that's a passion of mine. So we ultimately ended up in Idaho. And I started a construction company that focused on property damage. So fire, water, vehicle impact. Built that with a good team to between 250 to 300 renovations a year or repairs in a year. Sold that in 2017, had my second good exit, and started private lending some handshake loans in 2017. 2019, I was at a mastermind, and one of the speakers was somebody from Wall Street who had $1.4 billion under management. And he explained to the group how Wall Street actually works and how many fees you get charged that they don't disclose and don't have to disclose, and it hurts your returns. And I investigated it, and I told him he was lying, investigated it, and about 9 months later, I found out he was right through all my investigation, sold millions in stock, and went full-time in private lending. And that's how I got to private lending. And right now, my partner and I keep deployed about $20 million on the street at any given time. That's my story.
So it was really the hidden fees that got you excited? Is that what really drove you? Because it sounded like that was the key pivot point was, okay, you wanted to prove him wrong. But then once you realized he was right, you decided to switch your business model. What was it that attracted you to the private lending world?
Two things. I was already going towards that because I was already lending a little bit of money to a couple of people. Mm-hmm. And then I spoke with him And there's somebody out of Florida who has a private lender that he uses who has $100 million of his own money on the street with different fix and flip operators throughout the country. And I thought I was going to fix and flip houses. So I was going to do the private lending on the side and fix and flip. Because again, in my restoration company, we did 250 to 300 houses a year. Well, heck, I can flip 10 to 15 houses a month. This is easy, relatively speaking, because it's an assembly line, it's a production, versus in restoration, you're doing 300 custom jobs a year. People live in the house, you got to fix it the way they want. So I had everything set up, and I spoke with this guy, and he said, I think you're going to do great, but I don't think you should do it. Why? I've been going to training for this. I'm 6 months into it. I'm ready to launch. And he said, because you like to travel and you like freedom, and flipping houses is a job and it can be brutal. So I want you to speak with X, and he's going to explain private lending to you. When you're done, if you still want to flip, that's up to you. Go for it. But if you want a private lend, this is the guy you want to talk to. So I spoke with him. It was supposed to be a 10-minute call. He was an economics major from Princeton who ended up going to the London School of Economics. So he and I kind of had a geeky romance going on. And then he explained how it works, how the numbers work. And again, after 45 minutes, I said, okay, I'm in. Walked out of my office, went to Lois, my better half of going on 37 years. And I said, hey, I'm not going to flip houses. And she said, it's about time. I told you should lend back to 2017. You never listened to me. So I decided that's it. I was all in. So it went along with that conversation that I had with the guy from Wall Street. This guy here was a private lender, and I just jumped in. That's how I got into it.
So it seems like the stars really aligned for you. There was a lot of things that had to happen from different sources, really, for you to get enough information to make that change. But it sounded like there was really a financial pull that made you want to lend money. And for the average person who's listening to this, who doesn't understand the private lending world, can you describe it in a way to where it makes sense as a business, but also what was it about that attracted you to it so much?
Okay. I was a stock guy for a number of years. My financial advisor was a Harvard grad. He was actually 5 minutes from Harvard University. He was an economics major at Harvard. So he and I, he would give me lots of information. I would research it, et cetera. So I was totally into stock. And I liked what I felt was, relatively speaking, the safety of stock, because we did a lot of index funds, and then on occasion I would do something crazy that he'd tell me not to do, and I did okay with it. But I was able to understand the stock market as much as anybody can, who's just a retail person on the outside. When it came to lending, what appealed to me is I don't have anybody else that can affect what my returns are. And what I mean by that is, if, for example, Donald Trump decides he wants to increase tariffs, that causes the stock market to go up and down. And that's not something that's appealing to me. In 2008, when everything crashed, I lost half of my net worth in the stock market. And it was always in the back of my head that I needed to find something better. So when I found real estate as an option, and that you could lend on real estate, and I could have a significant amount of control, because as the lender, I take first position, I'm the first person in the capital stack. So it makes it a very safe investment for me. And that's why I like it. As far as private lending, and the private lending and hard money lending are terms that are used together and to mean the same thing as synonyms, and they're not. Hard money lending is somebody who is getting money from Wall Street. They are either getting it directly, which is not as common, and most likely they are white labeling it. And they are ultimately simply loan originators or loan officers. They are following the guidelines of whoever it is the capital source. And as people found out in Florida, one of the major lenders decided that they didn't want to lend in Florida right now. And they just stopped last week. And they caused a problem for a number of people. Us, on the other hand, we're private money lenders. we are using 100% private money. So I've got my capital, my partner's capital, and then we've created a community that started with friends and family. And now other people have started coming and they want us to put money on the street for them and get a safe, consistent return for them. So, answer your question, I got into it because I thought it was safe, it was consistent, and I have much more control over the outcomes. And I like the idea of being able to differentiate myself as a private lender. Because for us, if you want to do a loan, I don't have a manager. I don't have a underwriter that's going to decide no, because you've got the loan originator, then you have an underwriter, and then you have a manager slash supervisor somewhere along that line. With us, if you call me, I'm going to make the decision. You call Zach, my partner, he's going to make the decision. And that's it. And because it's private, my investors know, or community members know, what it is that we are going to put their money in for them. So if somebody can explain something and it makes sense to me, then we can lend on it. Now, it's got to be collateralized by real estate. That's a requirement, because that I can go and I can foreclose on if I need to. And I've been at this since 2017, and I've never foreclosed on anybody. I haven't had to, because I'm very specific about who it is that I'm going to lend to. So, we're actually very particular. So when we started out, we were just doing single family homes. And then we started doing small multifamilies. And then we started doing some backfill raises for multifamily. So somebody's going to raise X, they're not able to. We lend them what it is that they were unable to raise, and we collateralize the property, and it's on a case-by-case basis. And then they raise it after the close, and then they pay us back. Those loans are generally 3 to 6 months. And then I lent on mobile homes. I never thought I would lend on mobile homes. Where I'm from, a mobile home is $20,000 and it will blow over if the wind blows. Well, who knew? In Florida, they have $200,000-$300,000 mobile homes. That totally blows my mind that people pay that for those things. So we'll lend on mobile homes. I have somebody in my network who also has a lumber supply company, and he was short on capital at the end of 2024, and he needed some cash to keep his operations going. He happens to own some properties. So what I did was I gave him an equity loan on the property, and he used it in his business. So my point is that when it comes to private and the way we run it, if it makes sense, you're talking to the guy that's going to say yes or no. And if it makes sense, we're good. It's a property. What you use the money for has to be reasonable, but I've got the property. I'm well collateralized. Right.
Yeah, that's the key. Like, you really are in control of what happens there. And you mentioned first position. Do you ever land on second position?
We will lend on second position with specific criteria. So in that situation, what happens is they can't be more than 70% leveraged in total. So for example, simple math, if it's a $100,000 property and they have a $50,000 loan on it, we can lend another $20,000. And when we do that, we are generally going to cross collateralize against another property.
Mm-hmm.
And that way we're protected. And there are times where they will potentially go over 70% in property A, but then we'll use property B to make up the difference so that they're still able to get the loan, and we just cross collateralize properties. I have one guy in Ohio who cross collateralized 3 properties because he wanted to do it with no money down in Oklahoma. So I have good attorneys, and we're able to lend on the primary and then use the other 3 as cross collateral so that he could buy the property with no money out of pocket. And that was like a $1.2 million loan. So,
yeah, better safe than sorry, right?
You want it, well, he wanted 100%. And you've got to have skin in the game. If somebody doesn't have some type of skin, whether it be equity or cash, when it hits the fan, there's a lower probability you're going to be paid back. And I want the money to be safe. If I didn't want it to be safe, I would do things that are more of a roll of the dice. It's the reason I don't invest in crypto. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But I do understand houses. And Warren Buffett has always said, invest in what you understand and what you know. Well, I know single family homes. I know that they don't decrease in value overnight. You're not going to lose 1,000 points. As you will in the stock market, it's going to move in quarters. So that being the case, we can prepare for that.
Did it worry you at all in that scenario where that guy was, cross collateralizing all those different properties that he wasn't liquid enough? Did you worry about him making interest payments, or was that something you didn't consider?
Oh, no, not at all. We weren't concerned. I wasn't concerned with that at all because I saw his bank statements. He
Mhm.
simply wanted to keep as much dry powder as he could.
Mm.
And I can respect that. And he had enough money for the interest payments and he's made them all along and life is good. So yeah, we look at the whole picture. We don't go into it blind. And there are times where we'll turn down a loan because the operator is not doing their numbers. It's generally newer guys and gals that do this, where they think a 20% margin is good. I'm not going to lend to you in that. You're not going to make any
Right.
money. You're going to be mad at me when it's done. And then I also will do, you know, I will have a conversation with the person to find out exactly what they're doing. For example, there was a guy who was buying some property in North Carolina. I forget how many acres it was, but he needed a $1.6 million loan for acquisition. And he was simply going to hang on to it for a couple of months and then he was going to flip the property. Well, I brought up to him that if he's going to hang on to it for a couple of months, that maybe he should consider taking the property, breaking it up, entitling it, and then go to a builder with the land all ready to go. And what he should do is find out who the lenders are in the area first. I'm sorry, who the builders are in the area first, and go to them and find out, would you be interested in this if it was entitled? Then he's got all of that information. Then he can go forward and entitle the property and make a lot more money. And he
Mm.
had the property tied up. Believe it or not, he had a 9-month closing on the property.
Hmm.
So he was in perfect position to do it. So I referred him to a friend of mine who actually does land entitling. Now they're working together so that they can entitle this property and he's going to make a lot more money. So I've actually talked people out of loans a couple of times because a loan didn't make sense. They were going to hold it for 6 months and not 9 months and not charge him any interest for that 9 months while he was doing his due diligence.
Right.
Man, you don't need a loan. Don't take this down. If you can't figure it out in 9 months, give me a call back and we'll talk about it. But in the 9 months, you should be able to either flip the land to somebody or entitle it, or at least get far down the path to entitling. And then we can talk about it. But don't take a loan now. You control the property. You're in the driver's seat, man. And I talked him out of the loan. So I've
Mm.
done that as well. I've talked people out of loans, which kills my bottom line, but you know, you got to do the right thing.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that goes back to your purpose-driven why, right? Because you've done a lot of things in early on in your careers where you're helping people, and you're just helping people in a different way now, and that's by cutting a check, but it needs to make financial sense. And I love the idea of making sure it's going to be backed by real estate because it's the safest collateral that's out there. Um, have you ever taken collateral that wasn't real estate? So
I have not.
no.
Now, if it were something that had a ready market, I would take a look at it. I'd take a hard look at it and get a lot of different opinions on it. I wouldn't just jump right away. So, for example, I had somebody he was making custom golf balls and he started a golf ball company and he had the stuff made in China and had the company logo on it. And he wanted a $100,000 loan in order to get these golf balls made. Well, I can't collateralize that because every time you sell a golf ball, that decreases my collateral. I can't do anything with that. I don't know what you're doing. So that we won't lend on. We don't lend on inventory. Well, what we would do is if somebody came to me with, let's say, a motorhome and they want to borrow 50 grand, well, let me take a look at the motorhome. Is the value of the motorhome at least that's not more than 70% of the value. Let's say 70,000 on $100,000 motorhome. That's something I would take a look at. Have to be a short-term loan
Hmm.
because unlike real estate, that's a depreciating asset. But I'll certainly take a look at it. If somebody's got a boat, I'll take a look at that. Um, it all depends. So at this point, we have not because we haven't had the opportunity with the correct collateral. I've just got to have something I can sell. I can't. If this guy went out of business with the golf balls, what am I going to do? And I'm making this number up. What am I going to do with 100,000 golf balls? I don't golf. There's nothing I could do with those things. I don't even know who to
Right.
sell them to. But an RV, I can sell that real easy. And I know this because I had one and I sold it. So that would be easy for me. Or a boat, something that has a ready market, we would collateralize. We'll consider it.
Right.
Yep.
I've heard that emphasized the strategic advantages of private capital as compared to institutional capital, especially in like economic downturn.
Sure.
Um, why is that so important to understand the difference, and how important is it going to be in these trying times right now when we're thinking about the volatility of the markets with respect to tariffs and some of the other things that the administration's doing?
I think the difference is that we don't have all of these number geeks sitting there trying to figure out the worst case scenarios to talk themselves out of doing loans. And they want ultra conservative, or they can just change their mind overnight. So I've had people come to me and ask if I would private label for them. And when I look at it, I'm not interested, because if you think of it, or if you can recall back during COVID, just as it started, a lot of these guys like Kiabi just shut down, and people had these deals that were on the table, and there's nothing they could do. People lost a lot of money in down payments, money that went hard on multifamilies, although Kiabi is not multifamily to my knowledge. The point is that institutional money changes overnight, and they do everything based on numbers, and they don't care who it affects. There's no emotion for them. It's simply a clinical response to everything. When it comes to private money, when you have an existing relationship with somebody, it just makes it so much easier because it's not going anywhere. What happens when the economy tanks is people take their money off the street and they dry powder it, but it's there. If you can present them with a scenario that makes sense, they want to put it on the street. They don't want it sitting in a bank making 0.5% or 2% or in a bond. They want to be able to get some return on their money.
Mhm.
So I think that's an important differentiator, is when it hits the fan, you want somebody you can rely on that has if they have capital available. I had somebody come to me that I had known for a couple of years, and he's a multifamily guy, and he had a $4 million raise, excuse me, and $2 million. I'm sorry, he had a $10 million raise, $4 million evaporated overnight when somebody who had a closing didn't have the closing happen, and the $4 million they had committed wasn't going to come through. Well, the problem is they had $1 million that had already gone hard, and this was 24 hours before closing. I don't know if I mentioned that. So he did his dialing for dollars that overnight. He called me in the morning and he said, I'm $2 million short. Do you have anything you can lend to me? Whatever it is, I don't care if it's $20,000. I've got to do another $2 million by 4 o'clock this afternoon, because that's what the deadline is for the title company to wire funds out. And the seller will not give an extension because somebody has offered them more than he's agreed to sell it to us for. So I
Mm.
need help. And I said to him, well, sit tight. Let me look at my numbers. And he said, well, I'm going to call some more people. And I said, no, sit tight. Let me open my spreadsheet. I happen to be in a hotel. Let me open my spreadsheet and I'll take a look at it. And I was able to lend him $2 million in 6 hours because we had an existing relationship. Now, when I spoke to my attorney said, don't do that. I can't protect your money. And he actually had me sign a release that he would not be responsible, hold harmless. And I knew this guy. He has a multiple 8-figure net worth. And again, we've known each other for 3 years. We hang out and we go to events. We truly like each other. So that was a very easy loan to make. It was a 90-day loan,
Mm.
um, and he paid it back, and everything's fine. I've loaned to him multiple times since then. I've got a $1.2 million loan out with him now. I did a $2.4 million loan with him. So that's, for me, what the importance is. When you have private money and you have a relationship with the private money lender who runs it as a business, and it's not just lazy money they have sitting in an account, they don't understand the process, but I do this as a business, as does my partner, then we can respond quickly. And we do the same thing with escrow draws. I don't understand this thing where it takes 5-6 days or whatever it is that the hard money guys take to release escrow. Give somebody an app on their phone where it geo-tracks where they're standing, take pictures of the work that was done, send them in. Now, we guarantee you're going to get the money in 24 hours, but I've released it in a half hour, an hour in the past. I mean, this isn't rocket science. They're supposed to paint the bedroom. Did they paint the bedroom? Yes, release the money. They need the money.
Right.
They need the cash flow. And if you have somebody who is a paper pusher and doesn't understand cash flow when they're getting their check on Friday, that's completely different than a guy who's built and sold 2 companies, is building a third. Small companies, I understand the need for cash flow big time. So I want you to take that money for 2 reasons. You need it, and selfishly, it protects me, because when it's not sent out, it's sitting in a checking account or a bank account, an escrow, and I'm responsible for it. So if something happens, I'm responsible for that money. If it's not in the account, I'm not responsible for it anymore. So we both have our interests are aligned. I want that thing done quick, and I want the money out of my account because I don't make any money on it anyway. What's a 0.5% or whatever the heck the ridiculous amount is. So get it out the door. I don't want it.
Right.
So that's the difference. I know that was long. That's the difference between private money, hard money, and why I think private money has a place in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's an important distinction, but I really like the way that you view the relationship side of the business because so many people ignore it. And relationship can go into the same bucket as experience. And for
Absolutely.
a lot of investors getting started, it's the whole chicken and the egg thing. Like they can't get a loan because they don't have any experience, right? But to get experience, you need to get a loan. So how
Yep.
would you recommend to people who are getting started on how to bridge that gap between having zero experience and no access to cash?
Okay. You don't want to be deal desperate. And what I mean by that is you don't want to have a deal and suddenly start going to look for money. And because for me, it's all about relationship capital. If I didn't know this guy for 3 years, there's no way I'm lending him $2 million in 6 hours. It's just not happening. Now, I had somebody who was buying some land in Colorado Springs, and I know we talked about Colorado earlier. He wanted to borrow $3 million in a week. I didn't know him. He was referred by somebody else I didn't know very well. It's not going to happen. I have to do a deep dive on the project and a deep dive on the individual. So my point is, start building relationship capital before you find a property. Connect with them on Facebook. Reach out. Say, listen, I'm new. I'm looking to buy a property, and I need some financing. I want to build a relationship with you to see if there's a fit, as opposed to, listen, I need the money and here's the return. I hear that all day long. No. Who are you? Are you desperate? Because when you're desperate, you are going to make decisions that you wouldn't make when you're not desperate. So you may buy a property and you're excited that you found your first property and you're going to go for it. No, relax. It's got to be a good deal. Bring a good deal to the table, build your relationship, bring a good deal to the table, understand your deal, understand the numbers, know what your exit is going to be. And for the love of God, when they request information, I had one guy, it took 18 emails for him to send me the list of information I requested on day one. 18 emails. He would send part of it and say, okay, it's ready to go. No, this is missing. No, this is missing. And I wanted to pull my hair out. So for me, he's not organized. What that tells me is he probably doesn't run his books very well, regardless of what the checking account tells me. Something is wrong with the way he runs his books because he's not organized. Flipping a house requires organization. You have to know that the drywaller goes in after the insulation guy and after the electrician, assuming the electrician's doing rough work. You have to know what the parts and pieces are. So that requires organization and to be in control of what's going on and to coordinate everything. Again, organization. So have the information that you give it to them all at once, present it in a professional format, because that tells me that you're taking this seriously and it's not just a side gig for you. And you didn't just take a weekend course the week before and go out and find a house that you're buying off the MLS. Be proactive in building relationships, giving professional information, and giving it to them in a timely manner. I think that's extremely important. Show them that you're in this. This isn't just a side gig. I've lent, it's not very common, but I have lent to some newbies when I get a feel that they really understand what's going on and this isn't just a side gig. This is their business and they need this to put a roof over their head. Then they're going to try harder. If they already have a W-2 job, okay, convince me. But somebody without a W-2 job who has a couple kids at home that are hungry, and they're married, mama's going to kick you out the door, or hubby's going to kick you out the door. You got to bring money home. So that's appealing to me. A single 20-year-old who already has a job and is doing this as a side gig, that's much less appealing because he or she lives at home. No, they're not going to have their heart in it. I want somebody who has their heart in it. It's very important, the individual. It's interesting is people will say that they're asset-based lenders. To me, the asset is going to stand regardless. The asset is the asset. But the individual, for me, is 90% of the deal. I'm assuming already that it's a good asset. That goes without saying. It's a non-starter right there, regardless of who they are, if it's not a good asset. But a good person and a good operator doesn't bring a bad deal to the table because they won't get involved with bad deals. So I'm looking at the person. What is your background? And if we're on a Zoom, because I Zoom with everybody or meet them in person before we do a loan, as does my partner. If they are not, if when we get on the call, they are questionable people and they're not somebody that we want to hang around and do business with, we're not going to lend it to them. We're not going to lend because I'm trying to read the individual. A good loan, the paperwork should simply be a way to make the lawyers happy, but it should be a dust collector. As soon as you have to pull out the paperwork, you know you've made a bad loan and you've bet on the wrong horse. It is the horse, is the jockey, not the horse, every single time. A good operator will make a bad situation less bad or make it work. They will figure it out. A bad operator can screw up a property that should have made a $200,000 net profit, or let's be more realistic, $50,000 or $75,000 net profit every single time. So you got to have the individual is so important to the deal. It's everything. Because a deal is a deal. A house is a house. A commercial building is a commercial building. It's simple math. But it's the person and what they have in their hands.
So it sounds like you've got an intuition about it, being able to judge somebody by talking to them and doing a Zoom. Hopefully you get to meet them in person. What about the background? Do you ever do a background checks? Do you pull FICOs? Do you do anything like that to even get a little bit deeper?
We're not pulling FICOs. And this freaks people out when I tell them, but you've asked the question, so I'll answer it. I'm 5'9" and weigh 160 pounds. When I worked with kids, we had kids on the property that were 6'2", weighed 220 pounds, and were 16 years old. Every man wants to say, if a 16-year-old took a swing at me, I'd take him out. This is a street kid. If he wants to take you out, he's taking you out. I don't care how old you are, how macho you think you are. These are street kids that know how to street fight. It's not like they took a class in karate and they're a green belt or something, or a black belt. These are street fighters. So for me, and then in the psych hospital, it was a locked unit. So these guys it was alcohol and drug treatment services. If they want out, they want out. And sometimes you have to call in other staff and you have to restrain them, the same with the kids. But my point is, I had to learn to read body language and facial expressions, what it is that they were saying and what they were really saying. It was just a self-survival tactic. So when I get on the phone with somebody or I'm in person with them, I do it subconsciously now. I am reading what it is that they're saying to me verbally and what I believe is really going on. And the conversation will go a period of time, and I've learned to ask open-ended questions. So if you say to somebody, so did you show up at 9 o'clock? Well, now you've given the answer to the question in the answer. You've got to ask, what time did you show up? Mm-hmm. And you have to leave it open and don't give them the answer. So with my conversations, that's what I'm doing. And again, I'm reading body language, having conversation, and sometimes a conversation is an hour and a half. It all depends on where it goes, and I let it go where it goes. Other times, it just ends quickly. I had an investor who called, and he had heard about me through some other people, so he was like 2 or 3 people removed. And we started the conversation, and after about 5 minutes, I said, yeah, I'm not going to be a fit for you. I can't help you deploy your capital. And he said, well, how do you know that? I said, well, let me ask, are you an engineer or a tech guy? And he kind of got surprised. He said, well, I'm an engineer. How do you know? I said, your attention to detail is too great. I'm not going to send you pictures on a weekly basis of the progress of the house. And I'm not going to give you measurements of how much baseboard they put down. I'm just not going to do that. So I'm not a fit for you. And there's some other things. He had a list of about 20 things he wanted updates on a weekly basis. I'm not going to do that. I can't. I'm not going to do that to the people that I'm lending money to. It's just not fair to anybody. So he was kind of caught off guard with that I picked that up right away and that we just weren't a fit. So because I have these skill sets, I use them. And then, the other skill set is I've done construction. So I don't need to pay somebody $50 to go in and tell me if it's new laminate or new vinyl. Just send me a photo. I can tell if it's new or not. I can tell approximately how many feet you put down because I know the average width of a room, and I'm looking to see where I can see the length of the room, where the door is. I can figure out, okay, that's about that distance away. That's about that. Okay, that's a 10-foot wall. And I'm not 100% accurate, but I'm going to look at it and say, okay, yeah, they've got correct measurements on that room just based on what I'm looking at. If I look at ceiling tiles and they're 18-inch ceiling tiles and they tell me the width of the room, I'm just counting the ceiling tiles over. This isn't rocket science, people, but I can look at it. So I have the two skill sets of having done construction and having worked in human services and having to protect myself from not getting my butt kicked by a 16-year-old. And I use that when I speak with people.
Yeah. You could have never seen that way back when you were using that skill to make sure you were safe with a young person and whether or not they were going to try to get out, that you'd be using that lending money, 20 years after the fact.
Yeah, who knew? Who knows what you're going to pick up along the way that you're going to be able to use in the future, and it actually works very well for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just never know. But it's a skill set. I mean, I grew up I was a C student in school. I had a biology teacher in 10th grade tell me I was retarded in front of the class. And then I grew up without money. We had 6 kids in the family. My dad left when I was 5. And I know what it's like to be hungry. We went to bed hungry at times. There wasn't food in the refrigerator. It is what it is. But those skill sets, or the things that I learned from their skill sets that they developed, are things that have helped me run small businesses. Because when you're a C student, you're used to not being the best, and you're used to asking dumb questions. I ask a ton of dumb questions, and I'm good with that because that's how I learned. When I started my construction company, you're going to get a kick out of this. And believe it or not, this is the truth. So I was interested in structural drying and odor elimination because that's where the money was. So if you have a flooded house, I went to the 3 top schools in the country, and we could dry a house. If you dipped it in water and took it out, we could dry the house in 3 days. We guaranteed it, or we wouldn't charge. We could dry a wood floor in place that was cupped, and 70% of the time it didn't need to be refinished. So that was the science part of it, understanding humidity levels, heat, vapor pressure, etc. That I enjoyed. Well, as I said earlier, my dad left when I was 5. My mom brought us up. She didn't have another boyfriend. That was it. When he left, she was on her own. I did not know until I started the construction company that a Phillips head screwdriver was called a Phillips head screwdriver. I didn't know a flathead was called a flathead. Nobody ever taught me that. My mother didn't know. You should have seen the way I used to bang a hammer. But I started a construction company because I stepped back and I knew the mitigation side, and I looked and I think, okay, there are tons of contractors out there. There are tons of people that manage these contractors. I can find somebody. And what I did was I found a guy who lived in Washington, and it was called Fridays with William is what we called it. I'd get on the phone with him at about 2:00 in the afternoon, and he would go over how a house was built. And then if I was on a job and didn't understand what I was looking at, I'd take a picture with my phone and send it to him, and he would tell me what I was looking at. And if the homeowner was there, I would just say, I'm taking photos for my records, send it off to him, and say, oh, I've got to take this call. And he'd say, oh, you were the homeowner. Okay, this is what you're looking at. This is what it's called. Okay, thanks. Hang up the phone, and I act like I had authority. So because I grew up as a C student, I'm okay with asking lots of questions and not knowing. And that has been something that has been very helpful for me growing businesses. I actually coined the phrase Columbo it. Columbo would go in, the old TV show, and he would ask a ton of questions, and you would think he was the dumbest guy in the room. But he always got his guy because he was asking the questions so that he could understand exactly what was going on. And he had an intuition in his head, but he had to ask the questions to be sure. So I do the same thing. I'll go in and I'm happy being the dumbest guy in the room. Sometimes it's actually the truth. I am the dumbest guy in the room, and I'm okay with that. I ask lots of questions. So, yeah, the stuff that I grew up with, and it's brought skill sets, created skill sets that I never knew I would need, but they're working. I'm doing okay.
You are. You are. And it led you to this unique space of private lending, which, it's interesting to me because I get some people on the podcast to talk about hard money. And there was a change in how they sell hard money. Now they call it private money, right?
Yeah.
You know that there's a whole rebranding of it, right? Because hard money
Yes.
just didn't sound right. Like there was something wrong with it, usury laws. Maybe you thought you're going to be working with some Guido who's going to break your leg if you didn't pay. They're like, well, we need to soften this a little bit, right? So we're going to call it private money, and that's what they do now at the associations and the conferences. It's private money lending.
Yeah.
Um, do you, you obviously you got an opinion about that because as soon as I brought it up, your face changed. What do you think about that whole
Facial
rebranding
expression.
of hard money?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What do you think about the rebranding of the hard money industry?
I think what you see is something that is a offshoot of what happened during the pandemic. I think people are very angry that your national chains made a lot of money and the mom and pops went out of business. And I think people are trying to some degree, buy more local and they're more focused on it so that they can support their neighbors and little hole in the wall restaurants that they really loved that are now gone. So I think that the hard money guys are trying to tap into that and they're calling themselves private in order to make them seem like a mom and pop, when in reality, they're just churning and burning and it's based on volume and not relationships. And I think that they are trying very hard to do that. If you think of it, when it comes to creating a group, and I've done it in this here after listening to somebody who has a lot of big groups, I say community members. My background in human services, we're pack animals. People who are loners are the ones that go and shoot up a school. Those are the kids that are the geeks, had no friends, etc. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, who I think they found in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, years ago. But the point is, we are pack animals. When you're not part of the pack and you're not in the pack, that's when you have psychological issues. We need the pack. So they are trying to create, like they're creating this community and they're friendly and I'm Bob the lender. It's all crap. They're not Bob the lender. They are volume and they don't care about the individual. For me as a private lender, and obviously everyone's going to be a little bit different, I have friendships with the people, many of the people that I lend money to. I had one guy when I was living in Texas, got $10,000 of fireworks 2 days before New Year's. And he said, hey, I'm going to have a party on New Year's Eve. Are you interested in coming out? Lois, do you want to head to Jacksonville? No, to Tampa to go see some fireworks? X has fireworks. Yeah, let's go. And we flew in for the day, hung out, and flew back on New Year's Day. And we just hung out. So I have relationships. I've been on, even with my investors, my community members. I've been on 2 different cruises with community members, and I'm going to Iceland with 2 other people. And I am so based on the relationship. And I'm sure some private money lenders don't go that deep. I do. But when it comes to hard money, they're just going to disappear. They're going to disappear when it gets hard, as they did during COVID and as they've just done in Florida. And it's not a relationship. It's all a number and everything is clinical. When I have somebody who's having a little issue with payments, if they're going to be a little bit late, they'll give me a call. And as long as they explain it and they say, okay, This is what's going on. This is why. And if I need to verify it, I verify it. I'm willing to give somebody a couple of weeks with not charging a late charge or default interest because life happens. I'm okay with that. For me, it takes a while to find a good borrower, and it takes a while to do the background check on them. I don't want to constantly be doing it. So if I find good people and I know that life has happened to them, I can work with that. Now, if work life exists for 9 months where there's an issue and you're not paying me, well, it's not going to go that long. We need to do something here. But if someone's going to be a week or two late, I'm okay with that. And again, I don't charge late charges in those instances, and I won't charge a default interest. Life happened. I get it. Just tell me what's going on. So, yeah, I think hard money is focused on clinical, and I think private money, when done right, is based on the relationships. I don't want to tell somebody I'm going to foreclose on them. That could affect them for a long time. And then every time we get a loan, we do a loan, we have them sign a personal guarantee. And this is somewhat of a point of controversy on occasion. If it is over $1 million, the wife signs a personal guarantee as well, because I understand asset protection. And what happens is people use that as an asset protection strategy. Oh, the wife didn't know. No, the wife signed a document. Either you're in this or you're not. It's not, if your wife's concerned about signing it or you're concerned about having her sign it, that tells me there's a problem with the deal. When I do these $1 million deals, it is generally people that are well experienced. And when I bring that up, they say, yeah, I've done that before. I don't care. And
Right.
the wife signs a personal guarantee. They don't care. It's the guy who's got the $100,000 house that's all concerned about it. And that's when the red flags come.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting. You're making a really good case for, using private money versus, hard money. And it is about the relationships. And honestly, too, I've worked with private money lenders that aren't as lenient or as relationship based as you are. Like they try to run it like it's a hard money lending operation because, they're just, they can't get deep with everybody, right? But you rerun your business differently, it sounds like, and you've become friends with a lot of people, and that's different. That's why I think people probably want to work with the REI Capital guys, right? That's what keeps people coming back.
yeah, I mean, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes I need to pull a lever, but I don't want to have scorched earth. If I just need to pull a lever and get a little nudge, that works for me. And that goes back to my experience working with kids. The kids were on a point system. And if you deduct points, it takes away privileges that they have. Well, if they do one thing, you don't want to take all their privileges away because now you've got nothing else. They have nothing to lose. They don't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to pull levers, I'm not pulling them all at once because then I'm done. I want them to still have mental skin in the game. They've already got financial skin. I want them to have mental skin. And additionally, selfishly, there are times where I'm fully deployed. I want to be fully deployed because then I go whitewater kayaking. I don't have to do anything. And I'm okay with it. So yeah, I want the relationships. I understand the pack animal. And you're going to have private money lenders that are mom and pops too. And that can end up as an issue. It's not a perfect industry. They get nervous at closing and they back out. What are you going to do? You want to have a backup. And I tell that to all of my borrowers. I don't need to be your primary guy. I'm okay with being your side chick. I'm good with that. Call me when you really need it when something goes wrong. I'm okay. We already have a relationship. And I'm okay with that. Sometimes people get offended, think I'm going to get offended because I know that they're going to Kiavi for the lowest price. Go. I'm not offended by that. But when you need to close in 3 days, give me a call. I'll be here. I have enough borrowers. I'm good. We're going to be okay. I'm not going to be offended by that. And I encourage it. I don't need to be a primary source because there are times we've got the 20-some million dollars deployed. I can't take on any more loans. So that does happen. So yeah, spread it out. I mean, it's not a perfect industry. Have multiple private lenders and go where the money is. If you want to go find a good private lender, don't go to the McDonald's Playland. Fly first class. I had a guy who was a lawyer, and I was flying from Texas to Vegas, and he asked what I did. We talked. He gave me $500,000 to put on the street with him. Like a month later, he wanted to do his due diligence and check me out. And being a lawyer, he went to town and wanted to read every document and ask all these questions, and I'm good with it. But then he gave me 550 grand, 500 grand to put on the street for him. So raise private money, hang out where the money is, and you'll find capital. And hopefully you'll find somebody with enough to lend to you all your needs. But if not, always have a backup. Always have a backup plan. I have backup plans. I've run into situations where people come to me for a loan and I have half the money. They need $3 million. I've got $1.5 million. I will contact another private lender friend that I have and say, hey, this is what's going on. Here's the deal. Are you in for $1.5 million? And if they have it, we're in the deal together. And the borrower doesn't see that. It's an agreement between them and I, or them and us. And we do that, but it's because you have the relationships. Go where the money is, have multiple relationships, because you never know when you're going to need it.
I think that's great advice to close on, for sure.
Okay.
Mike, this has been great. I really enjoyed getting to talk with you and learning a little bit about your background and your business, the way you operate. Definitely unique in the space, I will say. But these are all good reasons why people should work with you. And I'm assuming there's going to be some people here that are curious about learning more about REI Capital Guys and working with you. Where can they find you?
REICapitalGuys.com. And then my email address is mike@reicapitalguys.com. Now, I do travel a lot. And if it's someone that I don't know, I'm not as responsive. If it's one of my people that I've lent to before and they need a loan right away, I will stop everything else and take care of that person. My point is, if I'm a little slow to respond, don't take it personally. There are only so many hours in the day, and I don't work on Fridays. Life is short.
Amazing. Well, thanks for taking the time, Mike. I really appreciate it. You guys reach out to Mike if you need cash for your next fix and flip, or you're thinking about funding your next project. Take Mike's advice and reach out to him before you've got a deal. Don't go to him when you're desperate. Start building that relationship capital right now. That would be my advice for you. But Mike, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me as a guest.
You are welcome. And everybody, thank you for listening to this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Keep an eye out for more amazing guests like Mike, we're talking about real estate investing and finance and business and entrepreneurship. Really appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care.